Welcome into Ravens Rundown, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Today's show is sponsored by Mint Mobile. Plans starting at just $15 a month. We'll tell you more about what they do coming up later on in the show. Today, we are focusing on the Ravens roster projection, the final 53-man roster, what it will look like when the Ravens open up the season on September 11th against the New York Jets. Now, we're not saying any free agents or trades happen. We're going with the roster as is if it had to be cut down to 53 today. We'll reveal our projection in just a moment, but before we do, I want to make sure that you're part of the Noti gang here on the Rundown, and you may be asking yourself, well, how do I turn on notifications? Well, go to your settings app, scroll down and tap YouTube, tap notifications, and turn on allow notifications so you are the first to know exactly what's going on with your Baltimore Ravens here on the Rundown. So the 53-man roster projection. Let's go ahead and get right to it of how we see this roster ultimately playing out for the Ravens. Starting at the quarterback position, no real surprises here. Your two active quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. Anthony Brown and Brett Hundley ultimately get cut there, and the Ravens go forward with two quarterbacks at that position. The running back competition is where things get interesting. And to me, it's really dependent on what the status is of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards going forward. How healthy are they by the time the football season starts? And what we're doing this is assuming that everything's all right with those guys. The Ravens go with four running backs. Those two, as well as Mike Davis and Tyler Beatty, their rookie from Mizzou. And with that, Justice Hill is the odd man out here. No surprises with the other two, but Justice Hill being the guy that's on the verge of making the team or not, and ultimately we have Justice Hill as the guy that ultimately gets cut in this situation. So with that said, I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about this over the next few weeks. Our pinned comment, will the Ravens cut Justice Hill? I want to know from you guys directly. Type Y for yes, type in for no, if the Ravens will move on from Justice Hill. Will we see that? Remains to be seen. Want to know what you guys think your prediction is. You're about to get an ad break. Take advantage of it while the ad's playing. Get your votes in. Let me know one way or the other. Y for yes, in for no if the Ravens move on from Justice Hill. Let's break down the wide receiver position now. The much-discussed wide receiver position for the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, Rashad Bateman's going to make it. Devin, James, Tylen, Jalen Moore, all those guys, your top five. And then missing the cut, I think you see guys that have potential that could be practice squad players, like Mekhi Polk, for example, or Slade Bolden. Those guys, I think you could be looking at as practice squad guys, but it's not necessarily their time yet to make an NFL roster like the Baltimore Ravens at this point in time, where their day is coming eventually, but it's not when the season begins for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the tight end room for the Ravens. This is the best tight end room in all of football, and I think they're going to carry five guys that will be able to fill the tight end and fullback roles for this team. Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle, obviously. And then Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely, the two tight ends that were drafted that I think are going to have big impacts right away. You'll see do a really good job on this Ravens team. And then Patrick Ricard as well makes it in for that fifth spot as a fullback. Ultimately on the outside, missing it, Josh Oliver, Ben Mason and company, a couple of the guys there that we see ultimately getting cut and not getting those spots. Today's show is sponsored by Mint Mobile, our newest partner here at Chat Sports. And it's a company that's actually owned by Ryan Reynolds, believe it or not. And here's what Mint Mobile offers. Plans starting at just $15 a month with unlimited talks and texting, high-speed data, 5G, and mobile hotspots. Even your mom might ask you to stop calling so much with what we're offering with Mint Mobile here. And what a deal, folks. I mean, $15 a month. Think about how much money you'll be saving here. I mean, times are tough in this economy, right? We're all trying to save every dollar we can. Why not save with Mint Mobile? You can start saving today at mintmobile.com/chatsports. That's mintmobile.com/chatsports. Let's go to the offensive line now. And the offensive line already dealing with some injuries, in particular with Ronnie Stanley at the left tackle spot. Ultimately, we see the starting offensive line that we've been projecting for a while, all making it, obviously, with Morgan Moses, Tyler Linderbaum, all that and company on the front end. And then the next tier of guys, Jawan James, for me, is where things start to get interesting, because Jawan James is a guy that, although we haven't seen him play since 2019, he's being told that, hey, if there's that time comes week one where Ronnie Stanley's not available, if he's still not healthy yet, Jawan James will be suiting up at that left tackle spot. That's what we've been told at this point. Now, here's another thing that's very interesting on this. We have Ben Cleveland end, while on the out list is Ben Powers. And in that spot, in that position, you have three guys that are not only all competing for that starting job, but also competing just to make the roster spot. Ultimately, Ben Powers, what's unfortunate for him is not only do we have him not getting that starting role, but also ultimately getting cut on this. It's very cutthroat. Tough business. So tough deal for Ben Powers there to ultimately get cut, along with Khalil McKenzie, Jimmy Murray, and others there on the offensive line. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball now. The defensive line for the Ravens, a solid group with Calais Campbell leading the way, Travis Jones, Michael Pierce, and company. That's a good group there. The guys missing out for the Ravens include Isaiah Mack, Aaron Crawford, Rashad Nichols, not getting through to make the final roster for the Ravens. Now, with that said, I want to know, when you look at this Ravens team, offense, defense, special teams, wherever you look around, if you had to name a breakout player for the Ravens in 2022 as we break down this roster in depth, who would it be? If you had to give me one name, let me know in the comments section below a name that comes to mind of who you think is going to have a breakout season in 2022. We're going to be covering this team like no one else will, folks, as we count you down to kickoff. We are just a few days away from training camp, and we'll be all over it here on Ravens Rundown. You better believe it. Ravens news, rumors, trades, free agency, and more. And turn on those notifications as well. Make sure that you are a part of the Noti gang here on the Ravens Rundown so you never miss a moment of what's happening with your team. YouTube.com/RavensTV. That's YouTube.com/RavensTV. Let's transition to the outside linebacker spot. And for me, what's interesting here with this is, we have David Ojabo on the injury list. We expect him, whenever he's healthy, obviously to be activated. But you see that group there. Justin Houston comes into the fold. He got that deal done just a few days ago. Adafe Owe, I think, is going to have a big year this year. And one thing that's very intriguing here, Vince Beagle, I think, a few days ago was just hoping that the Ravens would not sign Justin Houston, because if they did not sign Justin Houston, then Vince had a very good chance to make the roster. But now that they've brought back Justin Houston, a guy like Vince Beagle, who they signed this offseason from the Miami Dolphins, is probably on the way out, along with Steven Means, Jeremiah Moon, and Chuck Wiley there at the outside linebacker spot. Inside linebacker, Patrick Queen. I'm telling you, I think Patrick Queen's going to have a big year in 2022, folks. He, along with Josh Bynes, Malik Harrison, Christian Welch, we have making the roster for the Ravens. The guys just falling a little bit short include Josh Ross and company there for the Ravens, missing out on that final roster spot you can see there. So a few more position groups that we're going to run through for this Ravens team. Let's look at the safeties now. This safety group, among the best in the National Football League. Marcus Williams, one of the best signings, I think, of any team in the NFL this year, of what he brings to the table. Chuck Clark, we have him listed in because you're not going to just cut Chuck Clark. If they are going to move on from him, it would be a trade. If they can't find a suitable trade partner or a trade that they don't like of sorts, then I would think that the Ravens would just hang on to Chuck Clark at that point. You don't release him and let him go for free. So Chuck Clark, I think, ultimately stays on this roster if it were as is. Tony Jefferson also we have making that roster. Kyle Hamilton, I think, is going to be a contender for Defensive Player of the Year when it's all said and done. But a very good group there, that safety group for the Ravens. Speaking of Chuck Clark, our true-false question today on the rundown. Chuck Clark gets traded before week 1. Will that happen? If so, type T for true, type F for false if you're telling me that won't happen. If Chuck Clark will be a member of the Ravens when the season begins, here's your chance to tell me otherwise. Type T for true, type F for false. Let me know. Let's look at the cornerback position now for the Ravens. A very interesting group. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. I know that there's been a lot of talk about Marcus Peters, whether they want to move on from him or not. Much like we talked about with Chuck Clark, you don't let him walk for free. If they find a trade they like, if Ravens management does, then potentially you can move on from him that way. But you don't just release Marcus Peters, just let him go to let him go. Kyle Fuller is going to be fascinating for me to see if they can find a role for him, whether it's as a nickel or on the outside spot as a backup on the outside. I think that tends to be more where he fits, but nonetheless, a solid group there at corner for the Ravens. We have missing out for this group, including Denzel Williams, Robert Jackson, Amon Marshall, just to name a few of the 5 cornerbacks that we have missing out on the Ravens' final roster. Last on the list, the special teams group, and Justin Tucker, as good as any kicker in the National Football League. If he were to get cut somehow, wouldn't that be insane? He's not getting cut. Of course not. No. Along with Jordan Stout and Nick Moore, that special teams group is, I think, I'm a guy that I'm very hard on special teams. I don't like to see money spent on special teams groups, but this is something, folks, that is a difference maker for the Ravens in wins and losses. Justin Tucker, Jordan Stout, these guys are going to be the difference in the Ravens potentially being a playoff team or not. That's the type of impact that you see from the Ravens special teams group. So there you have it. That is my 53-man roster projection for your Baltimore Ravens. How did I do? Let me know in the comment section below. Type A, B, C, D, or F. Put a grade on it, how you think I did with the Ravens' 53-man roster. And as always, give me a follow on Twitter at Tyler Jones Live. Love hearing from you guys there as we're talking Ravens all the time. And we'll see you next time here on Ravens Rundown.